Hey there, I'm Bella, and I recently realized that I don't put a lot of content out on this channel. That isn't really a surprise, but most of the content that I do make is large projects like VTuber models that I can't exactly do in the span of a couple of days, or even a week for that matter. That being said, it is Halloween, or almost, and so I've been working on some Halloween themed throwable assets for VTubers. If you don't already know, not only do I make VTuber models, but I also make affordable assets as well, primarily throwable assets because it's something that I love having in my own streams, and I think it's just a super fun and interactive thing to have for you and your viewers to also get involved in. I just normally feel like the scope of these simple projects are too small to make a video with worth watching, but let me know if it's something that you would like to see some more of. I also just realized that my model is stuttering a little bit. I honestly have no idea why, so I apologize for that. So, a quick little recap for the candy corn that I just finished making. I didn't do a painted texture for it because I figured it would just be easier to stick with basic materials, and I was right. Like, how much texture can you really put into it? And I experimented around a bit to get the outline. Normally for texture models lately, I have been making a separate darker image, so that way the outline itself isn't just a solid color. So I took the same concept and just did the darker candy corn colors, but I actually just liked a solid black outline in the end. And I'm glad I figured this out early enough in the project, so I could just add a black outline to everything else. I don't know, it just makes it look more cartoony, I guess. I just think it looks better. This set started out being a Halloween theme set, and so I even made a little pumpkin after the candy corn, but I just really liked the idea of making it all just candy, which is at least a little bit more versatile to use outside of Halloween. I'm also toying with the idea of making an Australian themed lolly slash chocolate set because I know that there's a few unique ones that I can put in like Tim Tams, Ferrero Frogs, Lifesavers, Mustics, Fantails, Minties, and pretty much everything in the Allen lolly bags. But of course, the next one will be more Halloween themed, and I'll use the pumpkin that I made alongside some other spooky symbols, like a witch's hat, a spider, a little ghost, maybe even an eyeball or two. Just those kinds of things to actually do a proper Halloween set. Now I'm just finishing up this wrapped candy. I thought about making the wrapper part transparent, but especially in the Twitch integrated throwing system, transparency doesn't always work out very well, and there are some extra settings to enable when it's imported, which is fine for me as the person who knows how to do that, and it's the reason that it doesn't render properly. But for others who buy the set and want to use on their own streams, I just want it to be as easy and plug and play as possible. Now, the sour worms were, at the time, a stroke of genius. I still love them, of course, I think they are great. I just thought that they were the best thing ever at the time of making them. The model itself, super simple. I don't like going overboard with my models, I want to keep them as low poly and optimized as possible so that it isn't a huge performance drain on my or anyone else's PC. Especially when streaming and VTubing, we already have enough programs open, so I try not to add too much stress to that. That is to say, the magic happens with the texture. It is again very simple though, just two colours, and please ignore how I did the UV, I'm lazy and I didn't care. If you point it out to me, I'm not gonna care. But then it's got a sparkly, sugary texture over the top. Can't forget to add in the outline, then I decided to make another colour variation. There's also like a red and yellow or an orange colour, I can't really remember, and I'm talking about the real life sourworms in this case, but I didn't want two red colours because I've already got the pinky red and the blue, so I just did a yellow and a green one and then just left it as those two. Next up is a lollipop. There are so many different shapes and colours of lollipops that when I was just looking through Google Images, it was actually quite difficult to choose one. And so I really contemplated doing more than one, and technically I did, and you will see that in a second. But I figured this one here was the most standard kind of lollipop shape and colour. Again, I didn't do a fancy texture on this one, and just kept it as the solid materials, of course with an outline, and then I moved on to one of my favourites in the set, a rainbow lollipop. Keeping it kind of realistic, I started with a round shape, but made it more organic, like where the straw part sticks in. Apart from that, it is again a super easy base model, and the magic comes from the texture. After exporting the texture into Clip Studio and cleaning it up and adding some dimension, it turned out so nice when put back onto the 3D model. And that's something that I haven't mentioned yet today. So my workflow when it comes to texturing is generally to create a really rough base or a block out and some guidelines. It really depends on the model, how far I go into it, but I don't like Blender's texture painting too much. It's good for a base, but any refining just isn't really possible. But it is handy because then you know exactly how it looks. Rather than painting on the 2D texture first, it can sometimes look wonky when unwrapped over the 3D model. But anyways, after I have my base down, I export the image out into Clip Studio Paint, do a lot of fixing up any gaps and adding in detail and layers, and then I can put it back into Blender, see what else I need to do, maybe do some touch-ups in Blender, re-export it out, and then just backwards and forwards. I honestly, these aren't complicated textures, so I didn't do that too much, but now you know. You know, it's moments like these when I'm watching back the footage and editing it and watching myself paint in the texture of this rainbow lollipop. Let me tell you, I spent ages doing this. It's probably the longest I spent on any one piece in this set, maybe only rivaled by the Skittles packet. But I still think that this took longer. And I don't even remember half of it or how weirdly I was coloring it in sometimes. Like, I'm watching this footage and it's frustrating me a little bit. But in reality, I was just zoning out and watching YouTube videos because it's almost therapeutic. So while I originally intended for this video to be a full process, start to finish, with no skips or jumps or anything, I'm going to save you the frustration and skip through the rest of the texturing on this one. And oh look, here's the outline and the final texture. Mmm, tasty. Moving on. I've never actually tried a Reese's Pieces chocolate before, so I think this is a kind of a standard thing that if you think of Reese's, this Reese's cup is what you imagine. Am I right on that one? I think so. Anyway, I was originally just going to do a simple material with no texture, but it was missing something, so I painted one anyways. And I'm glad I did. It looks so smooth and chocolatey and tasty. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't have a lot more to say about this one. It's a cool shape. I thought it would be a cool little thing to add in. But yeah, let's continue. I'm actually kind of really proud of the Skittles packet. Of course, I didn't want the base model to be just a box, so it's got some dimension in it, as well as the little spiky packet edge thingy. I don't know what it's called. But I am actually going to skip ahead a tiny bit. You're not missing out on much, don't worry. But I really just want to talk about the texture for this one. I contemplated just taking a picture of a Skittles packet to use as the texture, but that just wouldn't be me now, would it? So I made it from scratch, and in the process I simplified it a little bit while still keeping the main elements and the vibe. And I put a little bit of a spin on it. I think that the yellow subtext on like an actual Skittles packet normally has the flavor name, but I put my name there as instead a little nod to, you know, me as the creator. And you can really see the detail that I put into this as well, even if it may have been a little too much for something that's going to be thrown around on screen and seen for a split second. But I enjoyed the process, and like I said, I just zone out and I have fun. As much as I really want to show off the rest of the effort and detail that went into recreating the design of the Skittles packet, wait, I forgot. I actually made a couple of the actual Skittles, like the round little Skittle candy. Yeah, I made some of them as well. So they have their own little S texture on them and they come in all the different colors. And they would be super fun to use as like filler items. So in my mind, how I wanted to use them was that in the Twitch integrated throwing system, you can increase the throw chance of a specific item. So if I have it set to throw 10 items at once, I can increase the throw chance of the little Skittles so that they have a higher chance of being chosen within those 10 items, if that makes sense. But that's how I plan to use them, and you can of course use them however you want, and they still look great without modifying any of the settings if you aren't comfortable doing that. But I do think I have rambled on enough now that you can admire what I've been working on. And I'm going to move on to the Hershey's bar, because how could I not include that? So like with the Skittles, I did both a Hershey's bar block of chocolate thing, and then also a small piece of the actual Hershey's chocolate. Mainly because the detail in the piece of chocolate itself are really cool. So I use some text layers to kind of create the engraved look of them, and then the model itself has like the raised border thing. I don't know how to describe things that aren't visually. And you can see here how this is the method where I kind of really roughly sketched out where I wanted the highlights and the shadows to be around the parts of the mesh, and then exported that into Clip Studio, and then just refined it and smoothed it out and made it actually look good. But the design of the bar packet is a lot more simple this time. So I tried to make it at least a little bit more interesting than just text on a brown background. So I added some shine and reflections, and I still think it looks pretty cool. And so the moment that you have been waiting for, this is what they look like in action. Never mind, I don't have the program open. This is what they look like in action. I personally use the Twitch integrated throwing system for these, but they are also compatible with VNyan and VTuber Plus, along with all of my other throwable content. I have them up on Etsy, but they are also on Ko-Fi for a couple of dollars cheaper, just because I don't get charged as many fees over there. But thanks for watching. If you do want to see like more like shorter-ish, like simpler videos like this of making simpler content, just let me know, because I don't normally do it because I feel like people are only here for my VTuber content. But anyway, have a good day. Hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.